the operation that resulted in the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro by United States is a masterclass in surgical warfare, executed with overwhelming speed and precision. The primary unit responsible for the raid was the Army's 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment, Delta, commonly known as Delta Force. These operators are the Tier 1 asset the United States calls upon for its most critical counter-terrorism and hostage rescue missions. While Delta Force conducted the ground assault, they did not act alone. The operation relied heavily on the specialized aviation support of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers. These pilots are trained to fly low and fast in complete darkness using advanced night vision technology to insert teams into hostile urban environments undetected. The entire force package was supported by the massive naval presence of the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, which had been positioned in the Caribbean for months to enforce a blockade and monitor Venezuelan airspace. Flying at treetop level to avoid radar detection, a flight of MH-47G Chinooks and MH-60 Black Hawks pierced the Venezuelan coast. These were not standard military aircraft, they were highly modified platforms flown by the Night Stalkers, pilots trained to operate in zero visibility conditions. The MH-60s, specifically the direct action penetrator variants, served as the muscle of the convoy. Armed with M134 miniguns and rockets, these flying tanks provided a protective bubble around the larger Chinooks, ready to shred any ground resistance that threatened the mission. The Delta Force assault team rode inside the heavy-lift MH-47G Chinooks. These massive helicopters are the workhorses of special operations, capable of carrying fully equipped assault teams and, crucially, hauling them out quickly. As the diversionary airstrikes continued to pull Venezuelan security forces toward the military bases, the Chinooks flared into a hover over the target residence. The noise of the rotors was likely masked by the chaos of the ongoing explosions across the city. The execution of the mission began long before the first boot hit the ground. For weeks, U.S. electronic warfare aircraft, specifically EA-18G Growlers, had been jamming Venezuelan radar and communications, blinding the regime's defensive networks. On the night of the raid, this electronic silence turned into kinetic chaos. At exactly 2 o'clock local time, the operation kicked off with a series of massive coordinated diversionary strikes. Explosions rocked key military sites across Caracas, specifically targeting the La Carlota military airbase and the Fuerte Tiuna military complex. These strikes were not random, they were calculated to create panic and confusion within the Venezuelan military high command. By hitting the airbase and the military headquarters simultaneously, US forces forced the local regime to focus its attention and rapid reaction forces on defending these high-profile locations. This left the actual target, the residence where Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores were staying, vulnerable and exposed. While Venezuelan soldiers scrambled to respond to the burning airbase, the real attack was happening elsewhere in the city. Under the cover of this chaos and the deafening noise of the explosions, the Night Stalkers flew their helicopters at rooftop level, navigating the complex urban terrain of Caracas. They delivered the Delta Force assault team directly to the target, utilizing the element of surprise to overwhelm the president's personal security detail. The firefight was intense but brief. Delta Force operators are trained for close-quarter battle, CQB, a method of fighting inside buildings that prioritizes speed and violence of action to neutralize threats before they can react. Crucially, the mission mandate was to capture, not kill. The United States intended to bring Maduro to face trial for narco-terrorism charges, meaning the team had to secure him alive amidst the gunfire. Once Maduro and Flores were positively identified and detained, the operation immediately shifted to the extraction phase. There was no time to linger. The assault team and their high-value prisoners boarded the waiting helicopters and lifted off. The entire ground phase of the operation lasted only minutes. Before the Venezuelan military could realize what had happened or scramble jets to intercept, the US helicopters had already cleared the city limits, ferrying the captives to a secure location outside of Venezuelan airspace. The speed of the withdrawal was absolute. By the time Vice President Delcy Rodriguez issued a statement demanding proof of life, Maduro was already in US custody, flown out to face the American judicial system. The operation proved that even in a heavily defended capital city, a precise and well-coordinated force could strike the head of state and vanish before the dust had settled.
And Kenyans trust you that you are genuine. Number two, nimeona jana ukisema ati watu ya cocaine watafungwa maisha. Sijui wale ambaye wanabeba pombe watafanywa. Before ulete hiyo maneno, kama uko serious, those 2 ministers who are in your cabinet, kwanza futa hao kazi. Then we know you are serious. Mambo ya kupigana na madawa. Because I don't think you are serious. Hata polisi wanacheka, wanasema sasa hii maneno tunaambiwa tufanye kama cabinet, wenye kuuza madawa ya kulevya wanaketi na rais kwa cabinet. Sisi tutapigana nayo namna gani? Na tangu hao mawaziri wawili wamerudi, wamekuwa mawaziri. Moja ni ya hapa Central, mwingine ni ya Pwani. Ndio madawa imeongezeka. So kama wewe William Ruto you are serious kwa hii maneno ya kupigana na drug abuse, kumaliza mambo ya pombe, first sack the 2 drug barons who sit in your cabinet. Then we can now start having a conversation that you are genuine and it is something that you can do, although we doubt, because that program had started, you sabotaged it. Nikimalizia pale Minnesota, US, kulikuwa na pesa ya kusaidia people with disability, kusaidia watu wako na challenges. Hiyo pesa yote ikaibiwa, ikaletwa hapa Kenya. Wakanunua mashamba, wakanunua manyumba, wakajenga mall. Sasa Amerika wamejua, wameanza kutafuta hiyo watu. Ingine ndio ilipatiwa rais kufanya kampeni ya UDA. Iko mall moja iko Eastleigh, ilijengwa na hiyo pesa. Huyo mwenye hiyo mall ni business partner ya rais. Mchele ile imeagizwa ndio imalize watu ya Mwea, 500,000 metric tons imepewa huyo mwenye hiyo mall ambaye ilijengwa na hiyo pesa ilitolewa Minnesota. Sasa tunaambia Trump amesema atakuja kuchukua hiyo watu hapa na tunamkaribisha, lakini jana rais ameshinda akifanya mipango vile mahakama itazuia hiyo watu kuchukuliwa. Kuna ile process inaitwa extradition. So rais anapanga wapewe court order wasiende, na mtaona watapewa court order huyo mwenye hiyo mall, because wa America wamemumulika. So we are asking Donald Trump, please don't bother with the extradition process in Kenya. Just do what you did in Venezuela. Yeah? Just send your people with a plane, come and pick that fellow from here, uende umshtaki. Na hiyo pesa irudishwe huko, hiyo mall iuzwe, na huyo mtu awache kutusumbua mambo ya mchele na mambo ya sukari. Because ndio rais anatumia to import duty free rice, duty free sugar, imemaliza wakulima wetu Western, imemaliza wakulima wa Mwea. And because Ruto amepanga na mahakama apewe order asipelekwe Marekani, we are requesting the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, to be kind to this country and to come through for us and to ignore that process and just do what he did in Venezuela, and Kenyans will be grateful. Now if it is possible, he can do it as early as this week. Asingoja sana. Hiyo mtu wako pale Eastleigh, we can tell you where he is. Atume ndege ichukue hiyo mtu. Vile alifanya pale, alichukua rais wa nchi. Na huyu Donald Trump ni matata. That's what we want him to do. Because that fellow alijenga hiyo mall na hiyo pesa, na ndio anatumika kuangaisha wakulima Kenya. All the duty free rice yeye ndiye anafanya, duty free sugar ndio anafanya. Ile shida yote imepata wakulima Kenya ni huyo mfanyabiashara ako pale Eastleigh ambaye alijenga hiyo mall na pesa imeibiwa Minnesota. Kwa hivyo tunauliza serikali ya Marekani, mtu saidie haraka iwezekanavyo. Na kama mkipata pia Kasongo na husika na hiyo maneno, hiyo ndege mnatuma pia inaweza enda na yeye. Nikimalizia mimi niseme mwaka huu wa 2026 our political program is simple. Ni kuuza chama cha DCP na kuingiza
Massive deadly protests erupting in Iran as President Trump sends a warning to Tehran, saying the country is starting to cross the red line. How will the U.S. respond? Aisha Hasni joins us now from the White House with the latest. Good morning, Aisha.
Good morning to you, Charlie. So the president says that Iranian officials actually called him over the weekend, called the White House, trying to negotiate, but it might be too late. The Wall Street Journal is reporting the president is going to get briefed tomorrow by some briefers on potential responses to Iran, including more sanctions, cyber attacks, and even military strikes. He is not expected to make a final decision immediately, though. The briefers are Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane. Now, Trump told reporters on his way back from Mar-a-Lago last night that he is looking at some very strong options.
On Iran, have they crossed your red line yet to trigger a response?
Well, no, they're starting to, it looks like, and there seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it, and we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination.
Human rights groups report the regime has already massacred more than 500 people as protesters are defying the Ayatollah's crackdown. And there's an ongoing internet blackout in that country. The president says that he is getting an update. He's being briefed hour by hour, and he's actually meeting with the Secretary of State later this morning. Charlie?
Thank you, Aisha.
You got it.
Let's bring in Hudson Institute Senior Fellow Rebecca Heinrichs. Great to see you this morning, Rebecca. Thank you for joining us. So what do you think are the realistic options that are on the table right now for President Trump? And how effective do you think those options will be?
Well, good morning, Charlie. First of all, I think that when we're talking about this briefing that the president's going to receive on Tuesday that's been reported, our viewers should know that President Trump definitely already has options in mind, and right. He has been regularly briefed by the military about the situation there. So this briefing that's supposed to happen tomorrow might in fact be part of a deception campaign. It would not surprise me if President Trump initiated some kind of U.S. activity to support the protesters before that briefing. But the various things we can do, we can already conduct cyber attacks against regime targets to give some reprieve to the Iranian protesters. We can get Starlink in there with Elon Musk to make sure that the Iranians have the ability to communicate with one another during this blackout in the part of the regime. And the United States can initiate military strikes against IRGC, that's the military wing that's protecting the regime right now. We can conduct strikes against them, or we can go against other military targets, their ballistic missile program, their Iranian nuclear program again, Charlie, again as well. So there's various scoped options that the United States could take.
So on the Starlink thing, obviously we're seeing images from Iran that the government doesn't want us to see. And some of that is getting around the blackouts because of some limited Starlink activity. But there is talk of trying to expand that. How does that work exactly?
Well, right now, Charlie, it looks like there's some Starlink devices that are being smuggled into Iran. Right. What the U.S. government can do, though, is to basically get a more robust space-based capability that can cover the whole country, and we might be able to do some countermeasures against what the Iran regime is doing to take out that connectivity of satellite. Remember, the Chinese have been backing the Iran regime, so we're starting to notice some technology that seems pretty sophisticated that the Iran regime is using in order to try to counter the Starlink that has been smuggled into the country. So the United States is going to have to conduct two things, get those devices in for the Iranians, get it in the air, and then also do some counter cyber strikes against the Iran regime.
Right. Okay, I want to turn to this. Cuba remains defiant after President Trump's removal of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. President Trump posting to Truth Social, there will be no more oil or money going to Cuba. Zero. Strongly suggests they make a deal before it's too late. Cuban president responding thus: Cuba is a free, independent, and sovereign nation. Nobody dictates what we do. Cuba does not attack It has been attacked by the U.S. for 66 years, and it does not threaten. It prepares, ready to defend the homeland to the last drop of blood. Are Cuba's days numbered?
Well, I think that they are. And, you know, as the Cuban officials continue to mock President Trump and act like these threats aren't serious or like the United States can't do exactly what he's threatening to do, I mean, they should look at some case studies in history, just recent history, of what President Trump has been willing to do. In 2018, you remember the Iran leader Qasem Soleimani mocked President Trump, and then he was eliminated by U.S. forces in Iraq. And then you saw Maduro, the illegal head of Venezuela, mocked President Trump during President Trump's threats, and then U.S. forces went in and arrested him. Now he sits in a jail in New York City. And so these Cuban officials, I think, should instead look to the Colombian leaders who mocked President Trump and now are changing their tune after seeing what President Trump has done in Venezuela. That would be good advice for the Cubans to take, strike a deal with the United States.
You would think that they might start paying attention, and thank you very much for breaking that down for us. Rebecca Heinrichs.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.